Going. Welcome to the 101, the small business and entrepreneurial show in Columbus, Ohio. I think we're still the only one. If there's another one out there, please copy everything we're saying. Today, as usual, we have Madison Gillespie from Lincoln Wallace. Madison, how are you?
I'm great. It's been a couple weeks.
That's such an exciting answer. Do you know that we have to do an
hour? I actually
hour?
really don't even want to be here.
Okay, well,
it's been nice being
Ray
on.
and I didn't want you to be here either. We can do it alone. I should introduce our other guest, Raychad Vannatta. How are you, Ray?
I'm good. How you doing?
And I should say that I knew Ray when he was a child, and he just told me he's going to be 40 years old soon, so he's no longer a child. Still looks like it. Ray, can you give us a little background on yourself, what you do every day?
Sure. Yeah. So what I do every day, I'm full-time in the military out of Rickenbacker. So I'll have 22 years of service in this summer. I've been an instructor pilot for, I don't know, a handful of years. I've been flying since 2005. So I've been doing that for a while. And then a handful of years ago, I transitioned, I started to figure out what I want to do as I transition out of the military. So I've been working on a master's degree the last couple of years, which I'll graduate in May with my MBA. And then I'll have Raychad Properties, which I've been owner, operator of that. I've been doing that for about 5 years. So yeah, it's been a good long military career, but like all good things, they got to come to an end. So, just trying to plan ahead. And so I've been working on school and working on my property business.
But you've been in the military all that time, and you're kind of used to working for the man, right?
I am, yeah. And in the military, it's a hierarchy type of system. It doesn't really promote entrepreneurship. You do what the boss says. Hey, I need you to do this. Okay, draw fire, move out, execute, get the job done. And working on your own is totally different than having somebody tell you what to do constantly. Hey,
does it feel like writing with your left hand now that you're kind of like, I can do anything I want, and you think, doesn't it feel like it's wrong?
Absolutely. But I think through my education, and I had a couple really good mentors.
Thank you.
That you're welcome. And but yeah, so I've had a couple really good mentors that have helped me along the way to help get me where I am now.
What kind of got you started into like thinking about some other options outside of the military?
So I think what happened is, we were talking about this earlier, that a few of the guys that I worked with were almost 60, and they couldn't step away from their job because they couldn't afford to. And I'm like, how have you made this much money for this many years? You've been in service for 30 plus years, and you can't retire. Like, I didn't understand that. And anybody that's in the aviation game understands. Everybody's like, oh, well, pilots, you guys have it easy. Well, not necessarily, because I'm out in the cold pre-flighting. I'm out flying in the cold. I'm out flying in the heat. There's no air conditioner in Army aircraft because they don't put them in there because they're cheap like that. But no, seriously.
You just leave the window open?
Yeah, it's about a hole about this big that just blows hot air on you.
They put Dyson fans in there.
I do have a Dyson
have
and an air freshener. And an air freshener.
Yeah, there you go. And new car smell.
They get stinky in there after all the guys been sitting in that seat for a while. But yeah, so I see these guys and I'm like, hey man, like, why can't you retire? You guys aren't playing this right. And I love those guys to death, but it didn't make any sense to me why they couldn't retire. So I had a good friend of mine, Mike Martin, that you might know Mike from World Gym back in the day.
Yeah, he's the guy that has like a very strange mustache going on.
Yeah,
and he has the same hairdo for 35 years.
35 years, fast talking, fast walking. Yeah. He looks like Mario from Mario and Luigi.
If he was a little portlier. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and he's mid-50s, still has like jet black hair. But yeah, so he helped me out. We had a long conversation. He's like, hey, let's go. You need to get in the game. And like anything, I asked a ton of questions before I got into it. I'm like, hey, I want to know the metrics. I want to know like how you did this. And we had multiple conversations of how he did it. And he said, all right, enough. Let's go. I got your back. I'll help you get this thing off the ground. And he did. And so I made the jump.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think without him, I think I had a good conversation with a friend of mine just recently, and I think one of the things that we talked about was you don't know what you want until you know what you can have. Mike showed me what I could have, and I took him up on. I said, you know what? I want to have this. You make that much money per year. I could fully retire from my Army job off that money. And it takes a while. Like anything, you have to grow your business.
Because you've been doing this, over 5 years now?
Over 5 years, yeah. So I jumped all in, and I didn't totally know what I was getting into, but I trusted Mike. because he had been doing it for 15 years at the time. And I made the jump, and I haven't looked back since.
The cool thing about Madison, the guy he's talking about, is I knew Mike when I was probably 21 or 22. And this is not to bash anybody, but I remember my uncle saying, you're just going to the gym. You're not learning to play golf. Where are you going to find connections? Where are you going to network? You're just going to be in the gym. But at the West Side World's gym, everybody there was kind of like a little entrepreneur, like they were in properties or
They were into something.
Insurance. Or it's like Andrew always says, I'm the guy who knows a guy. Well, Mike Martin is the guy who knows a guy.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to him, he had a really great paying job, but on the side he would have like these properties. And then as time went on, it was like 50-50 properties plus this job. But he was always kind of drawing money somewhere. But it's funny because two people in this room know this guy who the majority of the time he'd be in the gym, half covered in paint and half kind of like doing the next deal. And I remember I never thought to ask him, like, why are you covered in paint, bro? Like, it's fresh. Like, where did you just come from? But isn't that him?
He's the most down-to-earth guy you'd ever meet. You meet him at 5:30 in the morning after he's done with his workout for the morning, suit, tie, dressed to the nines, ready to go to work. See him on the weekend or after work or
he looks
whatever.
like Ned Flanders without the glasses.
Yeah, you'd be like, he's covered in drywall and paint and everything else, and you're like, hey man, and he would just look like any other guy that on the street, but he's the guy that's
he's into stuff. Yeah,
you always had to go out to his car too. He always had something in the trunk. I got to show you this thing in the trunk. You might be interested. If not, tell your friends. But again, it was always something, whether it was business cards or whatever. He always had some kind of entrepreneurial part of it.
This is in his blood.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, and then the other thing is with Mike, he wants to pay it back, pay it forward to the next generation. And that's one of the things that him and I talked about all the time. He's like, hey man, whatever I can do to help my little brother out, I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So that was one of his big things. And I think as we transition into a little bit more of an elder, we're not old, but a little bit more of an older guy, you want to help the next generation out however you can, and if that was his way of helping out, and it gave him satisfaction. So I'll tell you, there was one time after I bought this first property, which I bought in a foreclosed. It was foreclosed. It was in a very distressed state, and it took me a month and a half to get this property up and off the ground. And even when I had contracted work, I did some of the work, but we were down to the point where we sanded the floors. I said, hey, I get off work at 4:30. I'll meet you at 5. And right when I bought the house, he's like, hey, can I give me one of the keys in case I got to show it to a renter. Maybe I can find somebody for you. And so I show up at 5 o'clock. I changed right when I left work. I show up at 5 o'clock, and we were going to poly the floors, the wood floors. He's backing himself out of the room where he did the 2 bedrooms and the main living room. I'm like, Mike, you got to teach me this. He's like, oh, I got here early. I didn't want to wait on you. Awesome. I did it, right? So the next day, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get there early so he can't do that. So I get there even earlier the next day, like an hour early. He's already there doing the same thing. I'm like, awesome. Come on, Mike, let me do the work. But, he just wants to give back, and I think that's one of the great things. He also sets a good example for guys like myself to get back to younger guys, and that's why I want to hand it. Anytime that I can have a conversation like, hey, man, yeah, you want to go grab a cup of coffee? Let's talk about it, and I'll lay the treasure map out for the next guy.
Mentorship is so cool. We discussed that topic like maybe a month or so ago, just talking about college education and what that looks like to some people as opposed to like mentorships. And I mean, you're in a fortunate position where you took this guy up on an opportunity where he said, hey, you can get involved in other stuff, and here you are 5 years later involved with it. You're working on your MBA, and it's kind of cool to see both sides of it because, to talk about the gym was what kind of launched me in Columbus. I moved in here, didn't know anybody. And I started working out at Lifetime. It was Lifestyles at the time over on Bethel or Henderson Road. And that's probably been 80% of my connection base throughout the city. That's how I got started at NBC. I was working as a nurse, and a guy came up to me at the gym and started talking to me and said, hey, I think you'd be awesome in sales. And that's what led to
How many memberships did you sell?
13.
Oh, you mean at NBC. Sorry. I thought you meant like you were working there, like here's your towel for signing up.
That was
You'd be great at that
I worked at.
Yeah. There's no hassle. There's no judgments. No judgments.
No. I got kicked out because of the Lunkalon. Way too many times.
Yeah. But I want to kind of regroup this because I wanted to give Ray's background. And again, it's interesting to know somebody from the time they're probably 15, 16 years old, and then they're an old, decrepit, fit pilot. But
Right. Yeah.
and,
Right.
and you know what? You should shout out your Instagram because I think everyone should know what is your Instagram name. Listen, there are people that want to know. They want to know about
I do.
fitness and
I'll follow
piloting.
Fit_pilot.
Yeah,
Fit pilot.
underscore. So your military background, you meet Mike. Mario shows you how to do these things.
Mario does.
But I want to go back to something that Madison had brought up to me earlier this week, that being a workaholic, that's something we should talk about. This is why it's perfect that you're here, because your background literally is all about work and discipline. So I want to know how you, 5 years into this, you're not out of the military yet, right?
No,
Still full time, right?
full time.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you don't really have a choice. There's not a whole lot of days off. There's not a whole lot of, I'll get to this later, right? So everything is kind of following a chain of events. Do you see yourself as a workaholic?
That's a yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I was going to say it's the radio, so you have to answer.
Yes,
You can't-
yes,
you can't
yes.
bug it in.
I was going to make a smart comment, but yeah,
Well, you still
absolutely.
can. We
Yeah.
allow that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the show's about, like 90% of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your military service, are you going to just continue through to retirement, or what are you going to do?
No, I'm trying to figure out what a good out plan is, and I don't know exactly what that is yet. But we were talking out in the lobby, and I'll have my MBA. I have less than 1 month of classes left, and I'll graduate in the beginning of May. So that's my backup plan, so I can transition out of the military. But I don't plan on just jumping ship and going fully on the properties. I need to get that business up and going just a little bit further before I ever step away. I probably need to double what I'm doing now, but
Is your goal to go work for a corporation, or to start another business, or get some experience a little bit with using your MBA? Or
I think there's a couple things. I think I want to expand on my property management piece. So as I've learned to not only do to fix up a foreclosed property and I also learned how to do the property management piece, and I think that I want to expand with that and offer that as a service. But I also want to get out into the corporate sector. I think with an MBA, with my background in the military as a military officer, that I think it lends itself to being a good fit probably in like an operations role.
Sure.
In the civilian sector, if I can find something like that. But also, I've been shaving my face for.
you just want to grow a beard, man.
Let's be honest. I just want to grow a beard. Yeah.
This is a month for me right here.
Yeah.
You look like the Unabomber, sort of. I think it's a good look for you. And it
Yeah,
goes
I look
with that
13.
cat hair sweater you're wearing today. I like it, though. That's not a knock. Ray doesn't like it. I enjoy it.
I noticed Ray eyeballing it earlier.
Yeah.
It's just too small for me.
All right, yeah, I can see that.
Ray,
This is a
Ray's
boys'
bigger
medium,
fella,
by the
yeah.
way, yeah.
Ray looks like you went to the gym and you're the guy that's selling the memberships. That's the issue. So,
That's so
No,
true.
that's great.
so your vision. This is kind of a cool thing to talk about now, because you don't have a finalized plan, right? So you're kind of in the mode of, you're in the beginning phase of entrepreneurship, but you're already going to put in whatever hours it takes, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're already doing it. Madison and I were having this conversation because outside of occasionally when he goes on a trip and gets to play golf or go whatever, there's not a lot of days off because there's no one to handle the things. We both have partners we work with, but it's like, if you're the main cog, you can't take time off. And somebody asked me on the way over, I was on the phone walking in, and they said, "What? Aren't you going on vacation because Easter's coming up and all that?" And I said, "I haven't taken a break in 8 years. Like, Saturdays, sure, we're going to play with Legos and things at my house, but other than that, it's right back at it on Sunday. My Sunday is longer than anybody's Monday through Friday. But it's to prepare for an entire week, so we can have a subpar average show like this." So,
Which it's good.
right.
It's working out.
But Madison, you went from, you thought you worked hard before, right? When you worked in media, and now you're working probably 4 times as hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, in talking about this topic, we're in our business, we're in the middle of tax season.
Which is fun for everybody.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody loves taxes.
Everybody loves taxes, yeah. And as you
I'm
can
going to
imagine,
pay mine this year, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, no one's listening from the government, so if you don't get the check, I'm sorry, but go ahead.
No, but I see this consistent thing without businesses, like throughout businesses that we're working with, but also within our own company. I mean, my business partner alone, we've taken on some really big opportunities in the last couple months, and we were texting the other day, and he goes, "Yeah, I think I'm a little over 110 hours this week." And I'm like, I mean, it kind of hit home. I mean, we're all working, but actually, like, when you start breaking down what is that balance between sanity and actually living a normal life in some sense. And when I was out in Arizona, I needed to get away and just kind of unwind a little bit and take a couple of days off to where you kind of remove yourself.
Yeah, I'm glad that you missed the show for that. I'm glad you took that.
That's one of the reasons I left, was to avoid the show. But you start to realize that it's not even just what you're doing physically, like in the day-to-day stuff. It's where your mind goes all the time. And being mindful in the moment. I'm out in Arizona, 76 degrees, no humidity, a little breeze, and I'm on a golf course, and there's stress and anxiety coming up because I can't turn it off. You know, and those are the things that you don't see. One of the guys I was out there with, he's a CRNA over at Grant, and he goes in and clocks in from 6 a.m. to 4 o'clock, but when he clocks out at 4 o'clock, he's done. And I go, you don't realize the actual stress that you put yourself under from a mental state throughout everything you're doing. You know, just like Raychad here, he's working in the military and then also trying to run a property management business and then also in school. And that starts to add up, and I see this consistently, and I think it is just a really cool topic to how do you find that balance between what your business needs and you just being OCD. And
well,
you know, I mean, because there is a fine line between it, and it depends on the time of year for each business, but sometimes it can hinder where you're going to if that's all if you can't let go a little bit. You know?
Well, here's what I think is, like, you and I will put in the amount of, like, it doesn't matter. We'll get mentally, physically tired. But I want to know, Ray, from you, you're in the military. There is no, like, when you're going through basic and everything else, it's not like, son, you look tired. Just take a break, right? So you're supposed to learn to train past your limits, right? So you probably see yourself as someone that has no limits.
Well, I absolutely have limits, and I think as I've gotten older, I see those limits, physically especially, but I think that, you know, I went to Officer Candidate School back in 2004, and it was a $1 million program, shoved up your rear end a quarter at a time. And
oh my God, that had to hurt.
Sounds like
it was terrible. But I'll tell you, you know, when you slept 4 hours and you had to lead your peers and you had to just take on so much stress, it really exhausts you. And the same thing with flight school. Flight school is a marathon. It's not a foot race, you know, because you're there for probably a year to year and a half, and it is mentally and physically exhausting. Down in Alabama, the middle of summer, when you're out there in the sun flying the aircraft, can't cool down, and you get done and you go to class and you're sitting in class and you're doing everything you can to not fall asleep. You know, it's the truth. And the best advice one of my instructors gave me, he said, go home tonight before your check ride tomorrow, which is like your evaluation, where you do an academic and then an in-flight evaluation. He said, go home tonight and get a good night of rest. Don't study. You already know everything you need to know. Just go home and get a good night of rest. I came back in the sharpest I had been in about a month and a half, and just ready to kick the crap out of that exam. Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things that we have to realize what that balance is, you know, between spiritual, emotional, mental, and your physical. I think those four things are kind of where and it's all different for everybody, but you have to find that balance on what works for you. You know,
yeah, because it's twofold. It's not just the physical aspect for you; it's the mental and being able to turn that off a little bit.
But this mental would have to be like, we think we're mentally sharp to fly a plane, and first of all, to go to Alabama, I'd have to be mentally sharp to be awake in Alabama. Don't walk away from the microphone if you're not. If Alabama's listening, Nick Saban is listening.
Nick Saban is listening,
and they haven't cheated in that program. I just want to say that if you are putting that much, that's taxing to your mind, right? So you had to take that break to kind of regroup.
Yes, absolutely, and you know, and I think after every iteration of something like that, you need a little bit of downtime just to kind of get a mental reset. And I even see it now, you know, when I don't have a good night of sleep and I can't get to sleep for whatever reason, the next day when I fly, I can tell how sharp I am in the cockpit is degraded tremendously. And you know, we have an annual safety stand down day for Army Aviation, and we had some, I think they were naval docs came in and they showed us a sleep study of how much how sharp you are. Extremely degrades hour by hour, and it doesn't just bounce back. Like, you need days to bounce back. Like, if you were working on average like 4 or 5 days of 5 hours of sleep, it takes you 3 or 4 days to get back to of normal 8 hours of sleep to get you back. And they've done numerous studies with this. So that's one of the bigger things that that I try to do is make sure that, because everything.
Well, that's part of your discipline too, right? You got to plan your day around. How many hours do you think that? What's the sleep study? Because I'm getting a good solid hour 45, 2 hours, and it is fantastic. Wake up in a pool of my own sweat. But what would be recommended?
It's different for everybody. I think for me, my target window is 6:45 to 7 hours of sleep. Any more than that, I'm tired. Any less than that,
I like how disciplined that answer was.
Yeah.
About 6 1/4, and he knows to the.
I was hoping you didn't use military time because I would have done 3.
What time you go to bed?
Yeah, that watch on military
21 to
time
20?
because I'm going to be super excited when it's 13:01.
It actually is, absolutely.
Of course, because he's a fit pilot. Underscore.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
So Madison, when we're talking about the amount of hours, I know it's tax season, but you're typically, would you say you work over 70, 80 hours?
It's hard to calculate, right?
Could you do it now? Like, could you get your calendar out and just look at? Or you could just answer the question.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that was 3 questions in one.
It is. You can answer any of the 3.
But I'll just say this. If I couldn't do the workload that I was doing for somebody else.
Or you couldn't or wouldn't?
I wouldn't.
Wouldn't. Right.
Because
I thought you said couldn't. I'm like, you probably could, but you would not.
I would not do that. Because it's, to me, I couldn't even clock what I do. I mean, there's times at night where I'm on the phone till 9:30 at night for 2 hours, and I don't even think about that. It's just a part of what I have to do. Because you're working around other people's schedules. It's not really based on yours. And then there's always the pressure of the ego plays a funny trick on you when you feel like you're not doing enough. And I think sometimes we compare ourselves to other people and what they're doing and thinking, well, he did this. How the hell did he do all that when I only did this? And then, well, I need to work harder. I need to do, and it always turns into something where I think that I'm not doing enough, but then I find myself also reaching that point where I've done enough.
But you're beating yourself up about an unrealistic goal because it's not
to
that it has to be done, it's that you personally decide it has to be done.
Right. All is lost if it's not done.
See, but the other thing with that is, too, when you do something that you love versus working for the man and working for the grind that, whatever that job is that, is that you're there because you have to be, versus working on your own and having more of an entrepreneurial spirit and it's just so much easier. Like, I don't clock the hours with my real estate business.
Yeah,
I don't clock it.
Yeah.
And if I got to go over there at 9 o'clock on a Saturday,
You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
You don't even think about it.
And I don't even think twice because I just need to execute and get it done. Versus like, hey man, is it 4:30 yet so I can go home? Or wait, hold on, I gotta.
Oh my gosh, I do. Speaking in the choir, when I left my old previous job, I remember sitting on the couch in the afternoon, and it was like 3:30, and I had killed it the whole day. I was up at 7 and got everything I needed done. I'm sitting here, and I'm like, I would typically be back at the place of business I was at and sitting there for 2 hours waiting for the clock to wind down those 2 hours because I was told that's the time that I had to be there.
Right. That was it, 8:30 to 5:30, but by 10 o'clock out the door. But you better be back at 4 because you never know.
Got to see your face.
I remember somebody saying that $1 million order could call you at 4 o'clock. Well, call me at the gym because that's where I'm going to be. Forward my calls.
Yes.
I don't know why I didn't make it longer. I only lasted 15 years in
That's
regular. Yeah, but I think after 2, I was like, we can do this at home. Like, I don't even have to put pants on for this.
Yeah. So
and I did for some of those years.
Put pants on, or
yeah,
okay, good.
So, occasionally. Well, you have to dress down day. I want to cut the break right now because I'm just tired of Madison cutting me off. But you're listening to the 101 brought to you by Lincoln Wallace. Good.
Good shit.
Feeling good?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for being on. So get the fuck out.
Are we done?
No.
Okay.
I'm just teasing.
Okay.
It's an hour-long show.
I'm here party.
Starting
That's
now.
right.
Well, actually, we talk for about 52 minutes.
5150 Van Halen. You'll know about
5150 Van Halen. Yeah.
Is
Best
that
of both
One
worlds.
Direction spinoff?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're
Van Halen spun off from One
So-
So
Direction.
your favorite is, what's his name?
Oh, yeah. So,
I can't
what's
remember
his
because he's
name? It was
gay.
Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That.
She has a video of me sitting there. Like, I didn't realize she was filming it, and she's mouthing off about something. I'm like, I love Harry Styles. He's the best. I was at Barnes & Noble and I hear this song and I just Shazam it, and I don't know who Harry Styles is. I don't even know that name.
Really?
So I'm talking to her about it, and she goes, "Ew, you like Harry Styles?" Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Who was Harry Styles? Like what?" I thought it was like Harry Connick Jr. So now I found out who it is, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. But it all comes around
Hey,
because when
He likes Niall Horan too.
yeah,
Another
he
guy
does.
was in One Direction.
Yeah,
I know that
Italy.
because we play his music
And
on
you have
the
a CD
station
in your
here.
car.
Oh, I have all his CDs in the car.
I'm over here.
Autographed.
I don't know who's One
It's like
Direction.
the
I'm sorry, I'm
millennial
like-
version of
I'm like,
NSYNC.
okay. Yeah, I'm like this. I'm like, who's that?
I
Like,
would
I
say
don't know.
Backstreet Boys.
A boy
Okay.
band like NSYNC or
You like
Backstreet
Backstreet Boys
Boys.
and
NSYNC?
98 Degrees,
I like
a boy
Backstreet
band.
Boys way
She
better
didn't
than
know who
NSYNC.
Kurt
Bill.
I
Cobain
was
was.
just listening to Backstreet Boy radio on the way
She
here.
had no idea.
She does know, I think she does know who the Beatles are, though.
The
Sing
day we met
every word
Andrew
to
was
Backstreet
the anniversary of Kurt Cobain's death. And I go, "Oh, I didn't know that this was the date of his death." And she goes, "Who's Kurt Cobain?" And I go, "Nirvana." She's
That
like,
did not happen.
I
Shut up.
believe him.
"This is totally true." She goes, "I have that."
You know who
I listen
Nirvana
to that
is,
when I
right?
work out."
Huh?
Shut up.
You know who Nirvana is.
Yes, I listened to them.
Okay, well,
You
thank you.
didn't know the name in the beginning. Thank you.
Or she maybe didn't know the name of the lead singer.
What is it, Matt? That same guy. Nobody goes Dave Grohl from Nirvana. They say Foo
Come
Fighters.
on.
Or they,
Dave Grohl's
Oh, I was
awesome.
gonna say
Who
Dave
that is
Matthews
either?
Band.
Dave Matthews. No. Crash into me. He's terrible.
Dave Matthews Band is
know,
pretty good.
It's funny too because the same.
Steely
thing,
Dan are the best,
what's
though.
That what's the name?
One Direction.
One Direction. Same thing at work. Like the guys at work, they all have little kids, and they're talking about these kids movies, and I'm like, "What's
What are you
that?"
talking
I'm like,
about?
"Yeah, what is that?" And they're like, "You don't know that?" I'm like, "I don't have
You don't
kids,
know
man."
Frozen? I don't have kids.
Yeah,
So are you sad because you're infertile?
I don't know.
Oh. I didn't know if that's
Maybe
what you were
I
trying to
am.
get to.
I don't
We should
know
bring
yet.
that up since it's already on Facebook. He's infertile.
No,
What can
am.
I say?
Yeah.
No, they were in here yesterday saying, "Hey, you need to get married and have a kid." And I'm like, "I don't need to get married. I don't need to have a kid. Maybe get married.
No
but
one's
kid,
married on
no."
that. They all
Buzz
got
tries to
kids.
set you up every week.
Yeah,
Who does?
Buzz
Buzz.
and
Buzz comes in, he's like, "I know this lady. She's
and
got
Jeff
one leg,
Wiseman.
but
Jeff Wiseman yesterday was, "Hey, it's not too late. You ought to have a kid." And he's
Jim
only a
bought
few
3
years older
rings
than
from
me,
him.
but he's got
Well,
5 kids.
If you get married, I'll get ordained and I'll do the ceremony.
If I
Please.
get married, the
No,
sun's
it's
going
not
to
yet.
rise in the west and set in the east. I swear to God, my luck with
That
women
is
is so
premium
bad.
101 content. We need this.
If
Yeah,
I
we're
ever
gonna
get a
save all
date,
this.
it's all been captured on film." All right, I'm going to come back and then because you kind of talked about the first 2 points here, but I want to really drill into that amount of hours we're putting in and the
my New Year's
negative and
resolution,
positive.
Madison, is getting a date.
Really?
year, yeah.
You're gonna get on like
That's always
Bumble?
my-
He just
Tinder?
asked
I've
you
tried
out.
all the websites.
Really?
Yep, multiple times.
Tinder.
Get on Tinder. It's a
Gonna
smashing one.
flush
Back
my
pages?
money down the toilet.
Rachel says she's on Tinder and her back is constantly hurting her. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the two things are.
Is that the one where you swipe?
Yes.
Yes, she does.
Swipe right?
Mhm.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not on Tinder.
Swipe fingers.
I
She's
don't
on-
know.
she's on-
I think my account
She's
is
on
still
farmersonly.com.
I'm too old for
From high
Tinder. That's for
school.
young people.
Oh,
That Ray Moore from
Maybe I
Alabama was
should.
looking her
Maybe
up
that's
like too
why
old.
I'm
Like,
single.
yeah.
Swipe left.
too old.
Singles over 40. That's what I need to be on. One of those websites.
There you
Oh
go.
my God, you guys are hilarious.
I like some crab singles. All right, I'm ready when you are.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the 101, brought to you by Lincoln Wallace. We were talking about workaholics and about being in the Air Force. Only one of us has been in the Air Force, and I'll let you guess who if you weren't listening. I want to get back into there are pros and cons of being a workaholic. Which one do we want to deal with first, Madison?
What are our options?
Just pro and con. Like there's
Just a pro and con list?
Welcome back to the 101,
Oh, hey.
Madison. How are you? There's
We were
a
so
pro-
by the script, I didn't want to get off and have you yell at me.
Well, this actually is not a script. This is my grocery list. But
Oh,
sure.
okay.
I wanted to talk about the pros and cons, but I think we should. Somebody's pro is somebody else's con. Like we've talked about, Ray just said this before the break. When you are doing something that you're passionate about, that you don't see the negatives. You don't see the time spent.
Right.
You don't see what you're missing out on. The workaholic, though, which is defined as a person who compulsively works hard and long hours, it's not for benefit. It doesn't end that way. It is just that is what you do. That's who you are. and
It
you
becomes
keep
your
going.
identity too.
Right.
I think that the reason why I brought up this topic, or we had been talking about this, was in the line of work that we do, especially around tax season, not just for us but for other businesses. You start to really see the ins and outs of what they're doing every day. And my business partner alone, he owns a chemical company, and I'm helping him with some sales generation leads and stuff like that. And when I was there, and I'm looking at our business and everything we're attached to, and then this company, you sit back and you're like, that's a lot. It's a lot to take on.
Mhm.
And then one of the businesses that we're currently have taken over, the CEO stepped away, and we're kind of managing the entire company now. You start to see that identity there, where the business was the identity because it was so consuming that you kind of.
Are you saying it becomes like your mate? Like, or that's a terrible.
Yeah, mate. Are we in a pirate ship?
Yeah, I mean, like someone that has a parrot. I meant like it becomes like your significant other.
It really does. I mean, it's a relationship. You're attached to it, just like you'd be a wife or a kid or anything else. And I've seen that within the last. I mean, I saw it in my corporation. I mean, there were people that were all in. This is life. Can't think of anything else when I go home. It's distracting, everything. And then you see it from a corporate standpoint, and then you also see it on an entrepreneur level. And you start to question, like, what is that level of sanity and what is the balance that you need in order to still be effective and still grow your business, but not put yourself in a place where it's unhealthy.
Well, let's go through this checklist of questions, and then you guys can both say yay or nay, following the pirate theme. We'll just keep doing that.
Good day, mate. Oh, that's
Okay.
Australian. All right.
If you're going to wreck the whole thing, don't do accents. Okay. So, first one, do you often work through lunch or other breaks?
Pretty much all the time.
Yes.
Okay. Do you check work emails on the weekend or during holidays?
Every 10 minutes.
My rental property business, yes. Work.
Still
army
counts.
stuff.
It's
Okay.
still work.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
you're trying to
so-
make it seem like you're not a workaholic, but we're kind of.
He's trying to back out of it.
I like how he goes.
No, I'm not. I'm
Oh,
not.
and he's working on his MBA. No
Yeah,
big deal.
and he's a pilot. Yeah, we got it. Okay, stop shoving it down the road. Are you usually the first person in the office and the last to leave?
Well, I work from home.
So okay, so you don't leave a lot. So, but you're still working.
Yeah.
Right?
In context to going from my main job to go and do my rental property stuff, yes.
What about you, Mike?
I'm
Is it
lying.
you or
This
Rachel?
is not about me.
I just want to know.
Actually, listen, I'm the worst person because when I read this, I thought this was one of those things where someone would come to your house and do an intervention because these all apply to me. I mean, I've been on this. I had 12 phone calls before I got here, and every single one was like a dumpster fire, and I'm just like, so you need me to do this now? Okay, I'll do this right now. I'll answer you right now. Because I feel like it's not really the end of the funnel, but it's like, okay, yes to this, no to this, we'll get this done. That's kind of like what I feed off of. But once I got here, I'm like, this is the fun part. Then after this, it is the minutia of the middle of the week stuff. There are probably another 20 things I have to get done today. And it can, like a lot of it, probably 80% of it, or according to one of these questions down here, not delegating tasks, I'll just take on, which is my fault.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, when I started this, I wasn't necessarily on my own, but I was kind of in a bubble. And then when my partner passed away, I was definitely on my own. And I didn't have an office to go to. So my office was a couch, and I never turned the TV on. I would just sit there and work morning, noon, and night because I had to keep propping it up. And then as that was going on, I did not learn how to transition. Now, when Rachel came along, I was able to say, here is 1% of the things that would need to get done.
You
And over
slowly
time-
delegated.
Actually, no. What was advantageous for me is she started taking things from me,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
So, like, it would
Like
do,
stuff out of your house, or
yeah, I mean, she has really quick hands and big pockets. What I mean by that is she started, like, what's going on with it? Like, it was almost like having a significant other that you didn't want to live in the house and you didn't want to spend a lot of time. Well, that's a wife. So it was like having that where she was like, this isn't getting done, is it? Like, I wouldn't look up for a long, it would be like an hour and I'd just be working. I'm like, just sit there in case I need you, I guess. And she would start taking these things over. And I could feel like a little bit of tension coming off of, my day to where I could actually enjoy this. I could not enjoy this for like a year and a half. Like, I loved what I was doing and I knew what I was doing was right, but I could not get any joy out of it. So it was like, I'm talking to my daughter, who at the time was probably 5 or 6, and I'm like, but you don't understand how P&Ls work, but I'm going to tell you. And she's just like, can I eat paste? And I'm like, as long as you listen. Like, I don't care.
Just hear me out.
Which is funny because now she's 11 years old and she'll say, how was your day? Did you get all the traffic in and all that? And I'm like, this is none of your business. Let's go to the movie.
You
like,
did the total
like
opposite to
you
it.
got, yeah. And she got more serious about this business. I got more like, hey, let's play. But there is not a lot of time to, I'm not going to say I don't enjoy it. Like, this to me is fun, what we're doing now.
Mhm.
but it's when it's over, you kind of get that little dip where you're like, I wish I could have gone on longer. I mean, not with our current guest, but typically this is like such a good thing to do. And I know that people are listening to what we're saying, whether it's on the radio or Facebook. I don't know if they're getting a lot out of it, but there's that one person that goes, you know, they either have a follow-up question on something we said, or they really enjoyed it, or just the fact that it exists.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could do this kind of thing.
Well, not to take this into like a totally different level, but I mean, there's programs set up for people with drug addictions, alcohol, whatever else, and sometimes all that's set up for is just to have some perspective that other people are going through what you're going through, right?
I think that's why I started this, so I could know I wasn't crazy if I could bring other people on.
Right.
Like, I do not envy Ray's schedule.
No.
Like, it's dictated by somebody else. You have to be in uniform, you have to shave, you have to do all that other stuff. I mean, half
he
the
has
time
to
I
be
should...
on, he's flying stuff. It's
Right.
not like he's just at a computer.
It's not a
You
gimmick.
got to be dialed in on what you're doing.
He's not flying a drone,
Right.
right? I mean, but when I think about all the things he's had to do leading up to this, I wouldn't want to do that. I show up wearing wrestling T-shirts to do the show half the time just because we're on the radio. Who cares?
Right, yeah.
But when I think about how disciplined he has to be, it makes me nuts for him. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, he's used to it. Like, it's cool. But then I think about all the I start wrapping myself into what he's saying. I'm like, man, I wouldn't do that, or I'd want to change that. Like, I'm getting antsy about your day.
Yeah.
So stop talking about your day.
Yeah.
Unless I directly ask you again.
You're making him feel insecure over there.
Yeah.
No, I'm good, man.
Wait, I want to finish because we kind of talked about me, and I didn't mean to go off on a rant, but we have another 20 minutes to fill. So we left off our usually first person in, last person out. Do you go to work when you are ill, or do you work while you're sick?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you guys are terrible.
Previously, no. I would wake up and be like,
Would you
I
really
have a
take time off?
99.7 fever. Won't be in today.
My cousin in Grand Rapids is sick. I won't be in.
I don't want to
Yeah.
get it from him. It's downwind.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And I even my full-time job, which sometimes it's painful to go in there just sometimes, but like even with my full-time job when I was sick, you know, the rental property thing, that's all on me. But even when I was sick or in the allergy season, the guys to the office to the left and right of me like, dude, just go home. I'm like, no, I got it. I'm good.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, go home. I'm like, dude, I'm good. Unless you get like the flu, and then they're like, go home, so you don't get the rest of us
Yeah,
sick,
right.
please.
Yeah.
Like you're in there hacking. Like, go
When
home.
I had the flu, I still was trying to come in and do the show with you guys, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't even get off the floor, so forget it. But I felt bad for 4 days that we didn't do it. Like, I felt guilty.
I figured you were just lying about all that.
Well, I was. It was meth.
Yeah. No, I mean, just last week, we had to cancel an appointment on a client because Josh, my business partner, was sick, and I've never seen him sick, but he still all day long working, not stopping.
Cry,
I'm like,
baby.
stop.
He's not a veteran like this guy.
I know.
This guy didn't take time off.
That's right.
Josh.
Yeah. Josh.
Yeah. Are your hobbies related to your job?
That's a good question. I golf. Yeah, sure.
But you're golfing with clients?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
No, not at all. Weightlifting, and I want to get as far away from work as I can. But I do like networking with the guys, especially young guys that want to. Like one of the guys at the gym, he owns his own maintenance company, so I connected with him. And I'm like, oh yeah, why don't you do some work for me? Because he's posted it all over Facebook.
That means their hobby is related to your job.
Only because
Don't point at me.
only because touch, only because we network. But other than that, like I like that's my unplug from
Right.
the world. So,
Yeah.
so
See,
yeah.
I mean, I do take clients golfing, but
I'm not saying it's like 100%. I'm just
no,
saying there are
golfing is
things-
my way of not turning my phone off, but just literally disconnecting.
Yeah.
Kind of like going to see a movie. I love going to see movies. I went and saw one out in Arizona just to kill 2 hours so that I could turn my phone off, watch a movie, and
What did you watch?
Red Sparrow was actually really good.
Do you want to do the rest of the show on Red Sparrow?
Yeah, could I?
No.
Yeah.
But
but no, I will say
I get that because I turn my phone off when I go to the movies. Now I used to leave it on, and I would be checking emails and all that, and I'm like, I don't even know what I just saw.
And at the end of the movie, you could tell like the final scene had happened, and you knew what kind of happened in the movie. And as soon as the lights started coming on, I'm like, I got to go back to reality. Like it was so crazy. I literally disconnected for 2 hours, and it was the best 2 hours of probably my trip in
I thought you were
Arizona.
gonna say your life. That would have been so sad. I'd have felt so
Not
bad
far
for you.
off.
Yeah. It's the best 2 hours of Red Sparrow I've ever had. We're up against a break, but I want to get one last one in before we do. Do you find it difficult to relax and enjoy your time off work?
Yes,
Yes, absolutely.
for sure.
I don't know what time off is, so I'm going to say yes as well.
Yeah, and one of the things
Well, that's the problem.
that's inherent in aviation, we always think like, what's next? What radio frequency do I got to tune? What tower? What air traffic control? Like, do I got to call base ops to tell them that I'm logging off of my flight? So you're always tuning up the GPS. So like everything is always like, what's next? What's next? And so so now that's just so deeply rooted and ingrained in me. I always think, what's next with my rental property business? I'm already trying to plan out my year for what's next. Hey, I talked to my lender. Hey, get your tax returns done so I can see what you made last year so I can lend you more money. And I already talked to Mike. Hey, when you're ready, once you get all that done, let's plan out your year to see what you can do next. So I'm always, what's next? So even on my downtime, my
You're
brain's
still thinking about
my brain's always
I know.
spinning for what's next.
For sure.
Always.
Well, when we come back from break, I want to get into this a little bit because I think we've shown that we've all failed this quiz that we are all workaholics. No matter, literally, other than he had the one dissenting opinion, but I was like, that's still fake. But for now, we're gonna go to break. You're listening to the 101, brought to you by Lincoln Wallace.
That's hilarious.
And I'm not a workaholic.
Jim,
But
you're here all the goddamn
No,
time.
I live a mile away, and I
That's
have been
workaholic.
called at home like at
He texts
odd
me at
hours.
5:33 on
Can
the
you-
morning when it's snowing, people
Like-
are dying, and he's like, "Hey, just let me know if you're coming at 10."
Can you come into my boss has texted me, especially since I only live a mile away. I used to live about, a little bit further away. But, text me or call me up. Hey, can you come in and take care of this, that, or the other? Because I don't mind. I live close. I live alone. I don't have any kids, no pets, no worries.
Couple bodies in the basement, it's fine.
I don't have a basement.
Well, where are you putting those bodies?
I live in a tiny little condo. I put them underneath the brand new patio that I
Oh,
poured.
nice.
Nice. It's a nice patio. You
Guys,
can have
just
drinks
let
out there.
you
He's
know.
got a table.
I'm gonna heat up my tuna. Sorry.
I didn't know you were dating.
Did you?
Didn't know I was dating.
Yeah. Just
No,
think
it's
about that
the,
when you're going down the hallway and you're sniffing that stuff.
And so we were in here last week, and
Thank you.
it has a strong smell.
Yeah.
It tastes delicious.
Her
Just has
food
strong
is
smell.
also
There's,
terrible.
I'll never forget. Like 2 years ago, at NBC, somebody brought in kale and started eating it right next to me. Ugh. I've never, especially when it's in like a warm office.
You don't like kale?
I don't mind
Kale
kale.
smoothie's
It's just
delicious.
the
Somebody's like
smell of
chewing
it
that in your
is-
Oh
ear.
yeah.
Dude, it's so bad.
Like somebody who's got like some like massive salad. It's got kale and spinach and everything else in it. They're
I was
sitting there
bragging about that.
and they're
Yeah,
and
I
they're
got a
eating
massive
with their
salad.
mouth open. It's like, come on, dude, quit making so much
And
noise.
you know what the worst is though? Like when somebody throws up and you smell it, because then it makes you.
Where are
wanna
you
throw
eating?
up. Dude, I fly for a living. You get sick in the back of the aircraft, and you're
Yeah.
like, then you're like this. You're like, what's that smell? And when we were
It's
in
like,
Iraq,
oh,
he got-
geez.
this guy, he like literally threw up spaghetti all over. He was in the very back row,
Was it
and
M&M?
Hopefully,
it was like, ooh, and it's like it looked like
Where would he
like,
get Skyline in Iraq? you douche?
It looked like he like literally like aimed it, and it went under the seat in front of him, all the way up to like right behind the pilot seat, which is like from here to the wall. And you're like, what is that smell? It's like Italian throw up. And
Somebody clean
and they're
that
like,
up.
this guy just threw up all over the floor, and you're just like,
Was he a soldier or was he just like?
he's a contractor. But yeah, you're just like, oh
I was
man, open like yeah, you're like immediately like open the doors, wash that out. Like everybody in the back's just kind of like just
Seriously.
throw up. Yeah, it's terrible. That's the worst.
That's why I didn't join the military. Vomit. It could happen. I won't do it.
Won't do it.
Won't do it.
I used to wipe ass for a living when I was in nursing school. I worked at a nursing home.
Is that why you
Literally-
still do it today?
Just to keep up my
For
skill.
fun.
Yeah, yeah.
For funsies.
For funsies.
It's like
It's a
continuing your
good resume
education.
thing.
Hey, buddy, come here. I don't know you. Does it? Come here.
Come
Just
on,
here.
just lay down.
Why do you have a big
He,
wet
and he
towel?
was working in the nursing home where the people could not take care of themselves.
Yes, that's right. And I literally, my job was to go in for 8 hours,
Change bedpans.
change them out constantly. I was on this rotation of changing people. I mean, literally one time I was lifting this lady. She's like 400 pounds, and I'm lifting her up, and I had to change the sheet. So you take the sheet and you tuck it underneath them. You clean them, you put the diaper on, then you go on the other side and push them back over, and then pull the sheet out. It's a project. And
Yeah.
right when I get her cleaned and new sheets on, I roll her over the last time to put her final diaper on. She sharts. It's sprayed on the wall, all over the sheet. And I'm sitting there, I'm like,
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, can I do this? Can I make it?
Why didn't you document this and then go back and teach school and go, day one,
Hey,
if you're
guys.
not ready for this,
Yeah,
you ain't ready
he
for
does,
this.
Yeah.
I'm getting into another
It
line
was
of work.
humbling.
Yeah.
My last night, I had a lady that shit on the floor, stepped in it, tracked it all over her room. Another lady who was a new patient went and pulled her pants down in the lobby and was peeing on the canary cage of all the birds. And I had another patient that passed away that night, all in one night.
Oh, wow.
And after that night, I never went
It was
back.
that bad rest home on 60 Minutes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was crazy, and it gave me a new appreciation for like smells and body fluids, and yeah.
You
Now,
could never be a doctor.
no, but if I had a kid, I'd be like, oh, this is easy. Boop. Done.
How's that work? What's this?
I have the little white in my head.
Oh.
Like, it's funny because
I
I feel
thought he was
like
pressing a button.
I feel like we're all geared for something. Like for me, people are like, I don't understand how you fly because I'm scared of heights and how you could go overseas and get shot
That
at.
is
Yada.
pretty crazy.
And I'm like
Man.
whatever.
Yeah.
And then I see something like where I see like an incision on something and they're like operating and removing something, and I'm just like, oh
Oh,
man,
gross,
I
yeah.
automatically turn away. They're like,
Couldn't do
you
that.
can't watch that. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, like
I-
I hate that. Like that's just like
Makes you,
yeah. I'm
but you don't
oh,
mind being 30,000 feet in the air flying.
Well, maybe not that high.
Oh,
but helicopters. I mean, like
10,000 feet in the air,
I think
whipping
we just
around.
exposed our lack of knowledge of planes and
Yeah.
aeronautics.
Well, I get it. Well, the commercial
He's going.
one's gonna have
He's going the speed of
I'm
sound.
in a
Commercial.
helicopter. I'm home in a helicopter.
Oh, you're a helicopter.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Blackhawks.
Oh, okay.
Ever seen Black Hawk Down?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
that's
fly.
pretty sweet.
Have you ever seen Avengers? Can you do any of those things?
I was going to bring that to you.
Like,
Like
Sorry,
Iron
that
Man?
one was
Can you
bad.
be Iron Man? I'm just
I
asking.
wish.
one
Oh,
day.
but you know what is funny though? Like, whenever I see a helicopter movie or a helicopter in a movie, first off,
Do you, like,
first off, I'm like a
diagnose
little kid. I'm like, ooh, there's a Black Hawk.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like in Transformers or like whatever movie. I'm like, ooh, there's a Black Hawk. But when they do stuff that's unrealistic, I'm like, that would never happen.
Yeah, so
like
right.
that
That's
would
Oh,
never
you're
happen.
that guy?
Yeah, I'm like, but I don't like, oh, hey
It's
man,
fake.
that's not real. But I'm like,
I do that,
But
but
I'm
I don't
like,
even know what I'm
hey,
talking about.
that's-
Like the
that's fake.
Titanic
I-
wouldn't
it don't
crash
work
like
that
that.
way.
Yeah. My buddy's dad used to say, I'm so sure, like to movies. So we're watching like Fast and Furious 8 when a car goes from like one parking garage 200 yards into another one. We're watching, he's like, I'm so sure. And I'm like, it's not real.
It's a movie. Come on.
I tried it with my Mazda Tribute, lost all my teeth.
Then he had to go to Dr. Ping.
Yeah, I went to Dr. Ping and she's like, I fix your teeth. Oh, we have her tomorrow at 10.
Yeah, she's a nice
watching.
lady.
Hello,
What
Dr.
time,
Ping.
dude?
Shut up, 10 o'clock.
That smells delicious, by the way, Rachel.
Thank
I'm just can't wait to eat.
Rachel's
did
going
you
to bring
just-
some tomorrow.
Did you heat up? With,
Did you bring enough for the rest of the class?
Yeah? You guys really
It's actually
want
inner
No.
thigh meat.
it?
I have some tuna at home. I have my own. And some
Are you
salmon.
working on cadavers back there? All right, let's finish
We
this.
got about
bird up.
14 more minutes.
All right, we're going to go
Before we
19.
start,
Yeah.
is there anything that you like want to mention to like people that maybe any of your services like with property management? Feel free to do that.
not necessarily.
Okay.
Or you have a website you want to mention?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
You know that? Yeah,
Pornhub.
because
I want to mention that.
what's that?
You can.
Pornhub. I want to mention that.
Oh jeez.
What, cornhole or porno? Porno website?
Cornhole is something you
See
can
how
look
this
up
just
on
like
there.
takes a weird.
Probably.
It's like we were
All
talking
this
appropriate,
cornhole.
like, it's like, hey, let's go
Anyway,
inappropriate real quick.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but
Okay,
you
just
know,
wanna make sure.
but
That's
maybe-
easy for Michael. He'll go
But maybe
inappropriate
a
real
plug
quick.
for like anybody that's starting their own business. Maybe
We'll
kinda
talk about Stormy
a little bit
Daniels for
about
14
when
minutes.
Started.
Cool.
Maybe talk
Yeah.
about
I
that.
might just start off with it.
Yeah.
What do you think is 60 minutes? All right, let's go home with this.
And
here's
that
a-
preacher in Tennessee, he's probably got a huge porn stash. That's how he knows
I
all
didn't
about
know you
Stormy
said
Daniels.
porn that there
That
was.
evangelical preacher
That was the same guy who was like inviting him.
who's
from his
calling her a
church.
hooker.
Well, technically, she had relations for money, which is the
Yeah,
same
but-
thing as prom. So all those girls are hookers.
Every porn star's a hooker.
I want to talk about stress, the stress of this, and then negative impacts on personal lives, and see if you guys are there. I mean, I know your personal life is shit.
It's
Ready,
not-
Jimmy?
Juan? Sometimes
Oh,
it's
that's
Juan.
right. Well, we didn't introduce Jim. It's Juan because
Juan
we can't
Thomas.
let people know that Jim is here, but Juan is. All right.
Okay,
ready?
here we go.
Welcome back to the 101, brought to you by Lincoln Wallace. We were discussing workaholics or workaholism. Maybe that's a
Is that a
thing.
word?
I think you can have like interventions for that too.
Kind of like alcoholism, workaholism.
I think one is
Rageaholism.
worse.
Well,
one is
alcoholism,
really fun.
Well, that's a self-diagnosed thing, alcoholism. So workaholism. So
He's
I mean, if
trying
you
to, like,
self-diagnose, I'm
admit
just
something.
saying.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
Do
I
you
can
have to
still
have any
function.
work intervention where people would walk in your house?
Well, here's the question: how do you know that somebody is a worker? Like, people say that in passing, like, "Oh, they're just a workaholic. They really like it." Sometimes it'd be nice to have that, like, person kind of interrupt it.
Here's a good example. My business partner, 110 hours last week, finally gets away, goes to Vegas for 2 days. It's his birthday, and it's 8 o'clock out there. He has 113 emails by the time he even wakes up, and he's emailing, responding everything back to me. Talks to 2 clients on the phone, and finally I'm like, Josh, shut it down. Like, it's your birthday, you're in Vegas, and you're responding to every single email.
But see,
that
you
you're
just
getting.
said shut it down, and I'm getting mad thinking that you're telling me to shut it. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be like, yeah, I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to do this.
Well, that's basically what he does.
I'll stop CCing you. Is what I would do.
Yeah, that's basically. I think that's what it turns into.
But in that case, do you think it is people? There's a lot of stress that goes with this, right? So they always say it's not healthy to do something too much, whether it's working out, whatever it is you're involved in. If you're doing too much of it, they say it's a bad thing. So the stress that comes from it, like, Madison, you don't strike me as the most stressed out guy, except for when the time comes and you are stressed out. You're kind of like a Muppet. Like, you're just kind of like all raggy. Like, you can't function for a little bit.
It's tough for me. Yes, I never really knew the level of stress until I got really into sales. As far as having to be on all the time and always having something either in the pipeline or something you're currently working on or making a customer happy. And so, I mean, the stress level really kicked in when I got into sales on that level. Then starting your own business, I mean, is a whole
But
nother
why?
level. Because
I know the answer. I'm saying there's people out there that are either getting into sales or they're in sales and they're stressed out, and no one bothers to say why.
Well, I think number one for me, it was delegating. We had assistants, but I didn't want to use them because I didn't want to mess up, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it comes back on me. I'm a perfectionist. I like to make sure I have everything done when it's done. If I tell them I'm going to give them something on a certain date, it's going to happen. And so I would just I had to learn how to manage the dates that I was setting for my own clients, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to do it in a way where you can actually have a.
Well, you made somebody a promise, right? So
Yeah.
you have to deliver on it.
Exactly. And then now getting into what I'm in now and working for myself, time management's important, but it's also knowing when to shut it down at night, because I could be in the middle of an email at 11 o'clock at night, and next thing I know, that thought process has me up until 12:30, even though I'm exhausted because my mind is racing. And so I've found that more recently in the last month, my stress and anxiety level was the highest it's probably ever been, just from the standpoint that I have too high of expectations for myself, that there's only so many hours in the day and there's only so much you can take on.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing to admit. Like, it's not a bad thing to be like, hey, I'm stressed out because I'm not taking time for myself. I mean, self-love is a huge part of being a successful entrepreneur. And most of the time, when people aren't giving themselves that internally, they're a mess. They're not truly happy to the level. Yeah, you might be working for yourself and running your own company, but are you really, really happy with what you're doing? Because, like you said, I mean, when was the last time you got away, Mike?
Well, let's see.
Not saying you're
Nixon
unhappy,
was in
but-
office. I think I went away 8 years ago for 3 days to go watch Tim Tebow beat the Bears in overtime, and I was there to see the Bears. So it wasn't. I was a little stressed out. I didn't enjoy it. Denver's a nice city, sort of. That was it. I have not taken a break other than when I've been sick or had the flu.
Why is that for you?
Whoa. I actually don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I love what I do, so I feel disconnected from the world if I'm not doing this, because the other part to the stress part that we were going to get into is personal relationships. And I had somebody say to me, what's the end goal for all this? It seems like you're giving up a lot. But I think it's still kind of like the hangover effect of, I was willing to give everything that I had to this. And I was by myself. So like, everybody's waiting on this to, like, it's not going to work, shut it down, whatever. And it was proving that point. And then when you get it to a certain level, you're like, okay, it's existing now, it's working. I don't know a different way to do it. That's why researching this topic, I was like, oh, that's a cool thing to talk about. When you've got somebody that has a rigid military background, they're an entrepreneur. But as I'm looking at this, it's basically saying everything about me that is wrong. Because I have given
Sounds
up.
like somebody needs an intervention.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you're the one that's got the workaholism issue. but I'm not saying it as a negative. I'm just saying there are people out there who this is their life. They're going to work and work and work, but we've discussed this before. You have to give something up.
Right.
It is, what are you willing to give up? In the beginning, I would have given up everything except my family, which is basically what I did. So I have a lot of strange relationships. Like, I probably have seen this guy like 9 times in passing and not even paid attention. Like, there are times I've met people 3 or 4 times. I'm like, hey, it's really nice to meet you. We just talked yesterday, because I'm that tuned into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's right. It's totally wrong. But there has to be a middle ground. I'm on the complete opposite. Like, when you said you went golfing, I was happy for you, and I could see the pictures. I was not as happy when I saw the pictures, but it stressed me out for you, because I'm like, who's going to cover this while he's doing this?
Yeah, I know.
It has nothing to do with it.
No, right. But that's kind of where your mind goes.
Right.
Well, there becomes a codependency on that for your everyday routine and what you're doing, just like any other relationship, right? It's a full-on relationship.
Right.
And my biggest concern, and why I think this is such a cool topic, is if somebody came to you and said, hey, I want to buy your company for this amount of money, no matter if it was like way more than you thought you could ever get for it, what would you do? Would that be the end to your identity of what you're doing in a day-to-day basis? Would that provide happiness? Like, my mind goes there, because I think I'm stressed out, I'm working to this level, but let's say I get there. Then what? Right? I mean, it's a real thing to think about, because business owners do that all the time, and what they do is they just throw themselves back into the work because it's something that they...
Right.
I mean, and it's all good. It's all about balance. But I struggle with that with my own self. And I thought, is this a good topic? I mean, look at Raychad. He's in the military. He's starting a business. He's in school full time. That's a lot. Some people struggle working 40 hours a week.
Right.
And then you, 8 years. That's a long time to not give yourself that.
Well, I did make a goal. I said it would be a 10-year run.
Okay,
I had to
that's
equal
fair.
a certain amount of money. But here's the thing. I didn't say what was going to happen on the other end.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But I thought if you do that for 10 years, that's a measurable, actionable goal. And I think what would happen is I'd go, well, it's 10 years in one day. Let's just keep doing it and see what happens. But at least I gave myself that kind of finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't say what I would do after. So I'm willing to, stress myself out and have 9 heart attacks a day just to get to that point and see what happens.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm not saying entrepreneurs should follow what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm the poster child for what not to
do
to
with the work,
overcommit.
Right.
No.
I think that's why we have different people with different backgrounds, because you've got a different lifestyle, Ray, than anybody we've had on the show. But you're extremely disciplined, and you came up the hard way, but you also came up a way where you had to work it through a chain of command. That's very commendable, and people have to respect that. But it's when you're talking about the entrepreneurial part, you're just starting out. That's what I'm excited for you about, is we get to talk to you before you've really made a big splash.
Right.
So for us as entrepreneurs, we like that. It's a matter of, as you're growing, we want to see that. But you're going to do the same. You're going to hit that same pitfall where you're going to work too much.
Well, there's only 2 things that separate the guys that you're talking about that are in their 60s for retirement and you. Like, you saw something, you attached to a mentor who you saw could help you get there, because we all
Thank you
have
again.
one. But we all have somebody that kind of has inspired us at some point. And then you took action, and now here you are 5+ years later, still working for the military, but still have your side project going with another outlet to kind of, exit that. So.
Yeah. And I think I've been really fortunate in the military and in my civilian, the entrepreneur, starting my own business. I think I've been successful in both of them and been really pretty fortunate. But I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier, I think, and this is just my opinion, is that you just have to figure out what the balance is. Because you got your health, your spiritual, like your family, like what's going to give, and something's going to give. And sometimes you're going to get to a point where it's so far down the road where, your kids aren't going to like you, or your wife's not going to like you, or maybe, your health, because you're not going to the gym, you're not eating right because you're always hustling, always eating fast food. Whatever that is, you just got to figure out what that balance is, and it really kind of struck a thought with me back before I went to Iraq in 2009. We were working 70 to 90-hour work weeks, working minimum of 12-hour days, mostly 14-hour days, working every weekend. And, I just had surgery on my knee and I wasn't able to rehab it the way that I wanted to, and I almost didn't go on that deployment because I wasn't doing the rehab the way that I should have been doing it, because I was just working so
Powering
much.
through.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to wrap this thing. I'm going to take some ibuprofen. And I go to the doc. He's like, man, I need to drain this thing again. Hey, you doing your physical therapy? Yeah. Are you doing it at home? Kind of.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things. You just have to figure out what that balance is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that reigns true for any business, any entrepreneur, whatever you do, you know. But at the same time, you got to put the hours in, you
Right.
know. And that's
Yep.
the one thing I do like is the fact that, you know, when I'm working for the man, you know, I'm only going to get so much pay. My pay stops here. And if I'm known as the guy that's the overachiever, which I often was with my previous boss, I was his go-to guy. So instead of going to somebody else, he's like, hey, I'm going to walk down to Raychad's office. I'm going to give him the work. I'm going to give him the work. So now I'm known as the guy. So I just keep getting stuff dumped on me. And there's no extra paycheck. There's no reward. There's no time off.
That's when it all hits home, right? You're
Right? And then I'm sitting here and I'm looking. I'm like, what do I get extra? Well, if I do my own side business, all the hours that I put into it, it's what I make it.
That's right.
You know, and that's
Yep.
really one of the other things that really struck me to push me out into the entrepreneurial world to start on my own.
It's awesome,
you know?
man. Yeah, for sure.
We're running out of time today, boys, but I want to thank Ray for coming in, and I want to thank them, both of you, for judging me for working too much. I like that.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
And hopefully Madison will be back, and at some point we'd like you to come back and kind of give us an update, and maybe bring on Mike Martin, just so Madison can see his face, because we described it perfectly.
I love it. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, he's dude. He's fast talking, fast walking. He's like, come on, and he'll make you do something that you weren't even thinking about. He'll be like, come on, let's go, and you'd be like, okay, I'm in, like whatever. Like like he'll probably take you out to his car, so he's something out of his trunk, probably.
A fidget spinner.
Yeah, so next
probably.
time we'll bring Mike in his trunk in.
Perfect.
That is it for this week. You've been listening to the 101 brought to you by Lincoln Wallace, and we'll see you next weekend.